Here we go. So it's a very special chapter. Chapter 39 takes us as a continuation to the theme of the importance of kavanah. Kavanah means intention or focus, attentiveness. And we're explaining the value of performing a mitzvah and having prayer and saying a blessing with the appropriate kavanah. One thing, just before we dig in, one thing that's important is we actually explained at the end of the last chapter that there's two levels of kavanah that we are establishing. There's a lower level of kavanah and a higher level of kavanah. It's similar to the two components or the two kingdoms of the world, being the animal kingdom and the higher kingdom, which is the human kingdom. Of course, humans are on an elevated state than animals. We have the power of wisdom and speech. We have more faculties that we could use. And it's referring to a higher level of kavanah that we have the ability to do. That is a kavanah that is developed through deep contemplation and meditating on the greatness of God and God's oneness in the world and in my life. And when you develop and you ponder and you meditate on this concept, it will arouse in you a love and a feeling of respect and awe and reverence. And that channels your mitzvah with a great performance using this kavanah of understanding the greatness of God, meditating on it, and being excited to perform the mitzvah with that intent. That's a higher level. When it's developed through your faculties of wisdom, chachma, bina, das, and it goes into your faculties of feelings, love, and reverence, that's a higher level of kavanah. But then you have a lower level of kavanah, and that is a kavanah that is going to be compared to that of the animal kingdom. Doesn't mean it's cheap. Animals are special, but it's more similar to animals where it's more instinctive. Just like an animal acts on instinct, we also have a level of kavanah that is based on our instinct. We naturally have a connection with God that we are born with, based on our soul. It's innate. It's normal. It's there. So that is a level of more of an instinctive kavanah, that it's more of a generalized feeling that I have an appreciation for God. But it's not based on my own meditation. It's based on a natural feeling that I have. So the kavanah is there. It's just not as high as the first level that is really self-made based on my meditation. It's one that's already gifted to you from your soul. So that's a lower level of kavanah. So just to establish, we're going to dig in now. We have two levels of kavanah, a higher level, which is more related to the human kingdom, which is more based on my meditation, which is going to be a big theme in the upcoming chapters, the meditations that we have. And then a lower level of kavanah, which is more related to the animal kingdom. For that reason, we're going to see now inside, if you go through the entire text of Torah and in our prayer liturgy, throughout it all, angels are referred to as animals. The famous word of angels is chayot, which is like holy beasts, but it's a word referring to referring to angels. Why are angels referred to as animals? Not because they're in any way they're so holy, of course, but in the term that their relationship with God is very instinctive. It's natural. It's normal, like that of an animal that acts on instinct. So the instinct of the angel is to love God, to sing to God, to fear God, to respect God. It's normal. There's not really any struggle there. It's the natural relationship. That's how an angel acts. So it's similar to that of an animal, and that's why they're referred to as animals. So that's what the Tanya is going to start this chapter with, explaining that theme of why throughout the text of the Torah, angels are referred to as animals. Let's see that inside. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. If you're looking in a book, it's on page 450, chapter 39. And if you're looking on the screen, oh yes, Robin, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
So does that mean that angels are incapable of developing a higher level?
That's a good question. I think so. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I'm not going to get too Kabbalistic on it, but angels, the answer in short is yes. They have a limited ability of how high they can reach.
Wow.
And that's actually the one up. That's the advantage of a soul. Where here's the difference. The let's put it this way. I'm not going to get too Kabbalistic, but just to explain it in very normal words, an angel is a creation of God. And therefore, a creation by nature has a certain limited ability, a certain ceiling that it could reach, as any creation. You can't reach higher than your creation. A soul is not a creation. A soul is a piece of God. Therefore, it's as deep as God. It's as essence as God, quintessential as God. There's no limit to the ceiling of a soul.
Wow.
Because it's not a creation. So that's just an interesting, and neither is Torah. Torah is not a creation of God. Torah is the wisdom of God. So that's why it's not limited either. And that's why a Jew connects to God through Torah, because all of those three are eternal parts of God. So, but anyway, that's the answer in short of how much I can understand it. If anyone has anything else to add on it, you're welcome to, but that's how I understand it. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Oh, it does. It's great. Good answer.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let's see it inside. As we know, this Tanya text translated by Chaim Miller, it starts with just giving an intro to the chapter, and then we'll read the text of the chapter. But this is just a short and sweet intro that really just summarizes for us what we learned in chapter 38. So here we go. The power of Kavanah, part 2, which means it's continuing on the importance of Kavanah. Section 1 of this chapter says why the angels' worship is lacking. Chapter 39 continues our discussion in chapter 38 about the spiritual power of Kavanah, or attentiveness, when performing a mitzvah. We have already learned how Kavanah is the soul of a mitzvah, which floods it with divine light. Right? We learned about a mitzvah without Kavanah is like a body without a soul. So what we learned from there is that the kavanah is like the soul that totally infuses the mitzvah with divine light. It totally draws down God's divine light into the mitzvah. In this chapter, we will discover the spiritual address which a mitzvah performed with kavanah is capable of reaching, and conversely, where the mitzvah ends up when kavanah is lacking. So I think this is amazing. We never talk about addresses of where your mitzvah reaches, but that's exactly what we're going to do here. The location of where my mitzvah with kavanah reaches, and without the kavanah, where it reaches. So I think that's a really cool theme, how he puts it, what we're going to learn. So that's going to be in a little bit of a later, but it's going to start with the angels. Our opening discussion continues exactly where we left off at the end of chapter 38, with the Tanya's distinction between two general categories of kavanah. Preferably, we learned your kavanah should arise from an awareness of God that you've personally acquired through real contemplative work. We connected that to the human kingdom, where it's based on my meditation. It starts with my chachma, bina, and das. Starts with my wisdom, my inquiry, and my cognition of an idea, and it goes to my feeling. But a lower level of kavanah can still be attained merely by stirring up innate, we said instinctive feelings for God that you already have in your soul. The higher level the Tanya taught is comparable or comparable to a human, in that it is acquired through application of higher mental faculties. The lower level is like an animal, since it is based on an instinctual awareness that is already present in the psyche. So I went through that a little quickly, mainly because I already summarized that to you before. But if you have any questions on that, of course, ask. But without any questions, we will continue. And this description of a lower instinctual kavanah as animal in character is also the reason why angels are called chayos, or wild beasts, and behemoths, which is animals, as the verse states in Ezekiel's vision of a heavenly chariot, that the angels appeared with a lion's face to the right and an ox's face from the left, etc. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with this section of Ezekiel. It's one of the most deep sections of the entire prophets, to the point where it's actually brought down that you don't study this section yourself. It's called the Merkava. It's called the Chariot of Ezekiel. That is, in his meditation, he describes to us what he saw when his soul went up on high, and the vision of God's holy chariot. And on it, he says he saw the faces of animals holding the chariot. On one side, it was an ox. On the other side, it was a lion. On the other side, it was an eagle. And on the other side, it was a human face. Those are the four seats, four legs of the chariot that was being held. But those faces of animals is actually angels, but they have the face of animals. So why are animals the faces of angels? And this is the reason, because let's see further, but I hope that was clear. Let's see, the angels were on the second paragraph. The angels are compared to animals because they do not possess free choice to acquire a personal intellect-based appreciation of God. And their worship through either reverence or love of God is merely instinctual for them. As stated in the Zohar, Raya Mehemna, on the Torah portion of Pinchas. At first glance, the angels, who are purely spiritual, seem to bear no resemblance to animals, whose consciousness is focused exclusively on the physical world, right? Animals are all about the next meal they're going to have. Angels are all about the next song they could sing to God. But scripture chose to describe the angels as wild beasts and animals to indicate that the angels' emotional enrapture with God, however impressive it may be, is ultimately instinctual for them and not earned, which is an awesome idea to think about, that it's not that impressive because it's normal, it's instinctual. They don't have a free choice or a challenge to not do it. It's normal to them to sing. It's not something they earn on their own. And that's why the tzaddikim are considered to be higher than the angels. So tzaddikim, we know, are the righteous ones. And the Talmud tells us in Sanhedrin that even though their awareness of God is much lower than that of angels, so why are they any greater? Because what tzaddikim achieve is earned and not instinctual. So just to explain that, we all know that when you work for something, it feels so much greater. The famous quote of Talmud is, a person would rather one small measure of their own hard work than 9 measures, the 9 portions that were gifted to them, even though you could get so much more. But when you plant your own tomato, you appreciate that one tomato so much more than if you buy it from the 9 of them from the store, even if you got it for free. It doesn't make a difference. But when you plant it, you appreciate that even if it's a smaller amount, it tastes so much better. It fills you up so much more. So tzaddikim, in the Talmud, it says, are higher than angels, which seems to be crazy because angels are so much higher in rank in the worlds, but yet we're saying tzaddikim are greater because tzaddikim earn their love for God. They work on their reverence and respect for God. Whereas by angels, it's instinctual, it's natural, and therefore it's not as great. Just see a question. What of the choice, so let's go back up. What of the choice that some angels made to mate with the daughters of men? Yaakov, good question. Beyond the course, beyond the Tanya, so I'm not going to get too much into it. I'm not even so familiar with all the details. They're called Nephilim. Those were fallen angels, which means they went off the deep end, right? But in Hebrew they were called Nephilim, which means descent, like fell. And they left. I thought things came easier for tzaddikim and Beinani. Oh, that's actually a good, you know what, Shira, was a very good question. I was thinking the same thing as I was reading it, where that tzaddikim, it's not much of a free choice. It's so easy for them. They're almost more like angels. Whereas a Beinani, it's more hard work and earned. I think that, let's see if the Tanya explains it.
I was going to say the same thing, Rabbi, that it sounds exactly like how you described the Beinani and the Sadiq.
So let's see if he explains that. It's a very good question. I don't know the answer because I'm a little thrown off by that word Sadiq also, but let's see it inside. Let's see if he's going to explain it. Let's see it inside rather than me try to answer because I don't know. Good question, Maddie and Shkoach Shira. So let's see. As the Tanya will now explain, the inner reason why tzaddikim are able to achieve more than angels is because their souls come from a higher place. For the heavenly soul department, I like that word, the heavenly soul department of most tzaddikim is in the higher intellectual world of Bria, whereas the department of most angels is in the lower emotional world of Yetzirah. So this is from Rabbi Yitzchak, or Rabbi Isaac Luria, which is one of the Kabbalistic fathers from the Tzfat in the 1500s. And he explains that the soul of Sadiqim are in a higher world than the soul of angels. Angels come from a more emotional soul, meaning they worship God based on their emotions, instinct, and feelings, whereas Tzaddikim worship God more from an intellectual, meditative standpoint. Let's see further. The reason why Tzaddikim have more impressive achievements than the angels is because their souls are rooted in a higher world. The distinction between these two worlds being that the lower world of Yetzirah, where the angels are located, is illuminated only by the emotional powers of the Blessed Infinite One, namely to love him, to feel trepidation before him, and to revere him, etc. But the intellectual powers do not predominate. So just to explain, this may be a little going on the deeper side, but we know there's spiritual worlds that precede our world. We're in a very tangible, physical world. It's called the world of Asiya. It's all about the action. What are we doing? It's very physical. There's a higher world above us that is more of an emotional world. It's called the world of formation. And there's a higher world above that that is known as the world of intellect. It's called the world of creation, which is also known as the world of intellect. What we're saying here is Tzaddikim come from a higher world than angels. Tzaddikim come from the world of Bria, the world of creation, which is all about the intellect, whereas angels come from the world of Yetzirah, which is all about the emotion. The difference being the world of emotion is the love for God, the fear of God that they have. But even though they have some intellectual powers, that's not the dominating factor of that world. So Shira and Maddie, your question is very good. I don't have the answer for it. I thought he was going to answer it right away. We're going to let it sit for now and see if it doesn't get answered in the next few pages. I will attempt to answer it. But let's see further. So what we know so far is there's different spiritual worlds. Angels coming from a lower world than where tzaddikim, righteous ones, come from. And now he's going to bring sources for how we know these angels come from those worlds. Let's see towards the bottom of this Kindle page and towards the top of 452 if you're looking in the book. The Tanya now cites various Kabbalistic sources that indicate this point. So this is a very Kabbalistic idea, as stated in the Tikkunei Zohar. So again, the Tikkunei Zohar was written over 2,000 years ago. It's one of the main Kabbalistic books, or in the bottom line, and Eitz Chaim, which is from Rabbi Isaac Luria, that the 6 emotional spheres of Atzilus have their nest in Yetzirah. It is in the world of Yetzirah that the divine emotions predominate. Okay, so everyone can see me? Okay, so we have, I explained to you before 3 worlds. We have the world of action. Higher than that, we have the world of emotion. Higher than that, we have the world of intellect. But higher than that, we have a world that is beyond any form or any description. That's called the world of emanation. It's like the first light of God. That world, in Hebrew, it's called Atzilus. It's a very deep, high level of world. It actually says that, let's say, the soul of the patriarchs and the soul of Moses comes from that world. Most of our souls are generated in the lower world of Bria, but the world of Atzilus is a much higher, deep world. There's nothing descriptive there. It's too holy, and the light is too immense and enormous for it to be broken down into fragmented levels. So there are emotions of God there, but the emotions don't really take on any significance until the world of emotion itself. So there are emotions of God, feelings of God in the highest world, but their nest, which means where do they mainly take on a figure? Where do they mainly develop? Like a nest develops the eggs and the chicks. That's mainly in the world of emotion, which is in Hebrew called Yetzirah, the world of formation. So I hope that was clear, but just to explain it one more time, there are emotions of God that are only brought out as descriptive and strong in the world of formation. So therefore, in Kabbalistic terms, their nest, the nest of these emotions, come out in the world of formation. Yetzira. Okay, so now let's take it to the top. And that's why the worship of the angels is constant day by night without rest. The fact that the angels' worship is constant, which is day and night without rest, shows that it is devoid of effort, because anything that takes effort is liable to fluctuate. I love that idea very, very much, where I'll just share it. One of my favorite stories of the Rebbe of dollars. We know the famous Sunday morning dollars, and if you've been around, you've heard me share the story before, where the Rebbe would give out in the later years, in the late 80s, starting from 1986, all the way till the Rebbe's stroke in 1992, the Rebbe would stand on Sunday and give out dollars to people to give to charity. It was a way of people to get a moment with the Rebbe and to ask a blessing from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe wanted that anytime two Jews meet, the Rebbe and this person, it would benefit a third that you become a messenger of charity. And by the way, it wasn't only Jews that went, everyone would come, like on an average Sunday, the Rebbe would stand for 6 to 7 hours. And during that time, it was around 4,000 to 6,000 people. That's what the Rebbe's secretaries described. Could you imagine how many $1 bills were there? I'm blessed several times to have received those dollars from the Rebbe. Several other times, not on a Sunday, just standing when the Rebbe was on his way to prayer or on his way to the car to go home, the Rebbe would actually give coins from his pocket. The Rebbe would give coins to the children. So I was blessed to also receive coins from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe's had this very special attachment or connection to children. My older brother, he's 15 years my senior. He's in his 50s. He's actually going to come here on Sunday. He'll be here for a day. In the 70s, he dressed up as a soldier because in 1980 around, the Rebbe started ranks of Jewish children to be part of the army of God. That if you're under a bar bat mitzvah, you are part of God's army. Tzivas Hashem. So when the Rebbe saw my brother, the Rebbe saluted to him. It was like a beautiful moment of the Rebbe. My brother was wearing like a green army type of shirt, and the Rebbe saluted to him, which is awesome. So, but anyway, on one Sunday morning, there was an older lady that came in front of. There was a person who came in front of the Rebbe, and this person was going through big struggles in life, and it's really raw. You see some of these people. One of these people, another story, but a lady who lost her child, and she comes in front of the Rebbe, and she tells the Rebbe enough, stop it. We need Mashiach. You see the raw emotions of these people coming in front of the Rebbe. Some of them was very happy news. Some of them was absolute miracles. Like one of these people that came in front of the Rebbe with a child said that my child never uttered a word. Like my child can't speak. And we went to every type of therapy, and he doesn't open his mouth. So the Rebbe said, why don't you teach him Maida Ani? Why don't you teach him the morning prayer to thank God? And they say, we tried. He doesn't speak, nothing. So the Rebbe looks at the child and says, repeat after me, Maida. And the boy says, Maida, Ani. And you see the father's jaw drops. He was never able to speak. And now all of a sudden there's all these incredible miracles that just come out from this Sunday morning dollars. But one of these raw emotions of people is a person who was going through either depression, he was going through terrible times, and he was fed up with it. And he asked the Rebbe, why does God give us all these ups and downs? Why can't we just be normal? Why do we have to have all these mood swings? Why can't God just make us like angels? Which is what we're learning about here. And the Rebbe answers that, what is your profession? And he tells him that I'm an artist. So the Rebbe asks him, why is it that when I buy a picture of a beautiful waterfall, I don't remember what the Rebbe said a picture of. I think the Rebbe said actually a postcard. When I buy a postcard, it could cost pennies. But if I buy a painting of the same picture, but just a painting of it, it could cost an enormous amount of money. And Sherry, you're an artist, so you definitely appreciate this, where the Rebbe answers that why is it that there's such a difference of price, where if anything, the picture is the exact thing. You're getting the real thing. And a painting, you're just getting a description of it, but it's not the real thing. And so the artist says, well, in the painting, in the picture, you're just getting the stagnant, stale picture, whereas in the painting, you're getting the artist's view or the artist's feeling. Right, Sherry? Is that what you're saying? The feeling of it? And you see what the artist was going through as he was painting it. And the Rebbe says the same is also in life. What God wants from you is not the stagnant, angelic type, but rather the moods that we go through and the challenges we have. So I think it's a very powerful idea. Just related to here, let me just pull it back up on the screen. I'm always going back between the screen and the book. So let me just find the place on the book. So that's the worship of the angels, that it's constant day and night, which is the quote of the Rebbe here, of the Alter Rebbe, without rest. It doesn't fluctuate. And just to quote the previous Rebbe that he brings on the commentary here, he says, anything that takes effort is liable to fluctuate. Angels' work don't take effort, and therefore it doesn't fluctuate. But anything that you have to put effort in, it fluctuates. Some days is stronger, some days is weaker, but that's part of the effort that you put in. So I find that to be a pretty powerful quote from the previous Rebbe that he brought here right in the middle of the Kindle page. Okay, so we're in the middle of the page now. Another point demonstrating the angel's lack of autonomy and free choice is the fact that each angel is limited to one particular type of emotion. And their task is either to stand in reverence and trepidation, as we find that each group of angels is locked into a specific mode of reverence. The entire camp of angel Gabriel is to the left, whereas the worship of the camp of angel Michael, to the right, is locked into a mode of love, etc. Caesar. So just to elaborate on this term, because I know, Maddie, this is like straight up your alley to learn about angels and addresses of spiritual locations. So, but
Yes.
so just to elaborate on this point a little bit, throughout the Torah describes the work of angels. For example, in the story of Abraham, he is visited by 3 angels. They take on the disguise of men, but they are angels. One comes to heal Avram from his circumcision that he got at the age of 99. Another one came to deliver the news to Sarah, his wife, that she will have a child in a year. Another one came to destroy Sodom. And so those were the jobs of the angels, but one of them could have done the job of all 3. One of them could have healed Avram, delivered the news. Why did Avram have to prepare 3 meals? Just give Avram the job of preparing one, and that angel does 3 jobs. Each angel is locked into one job. He can't do 2 jobs at once. Which is interesting. I think angels generally, they have the name of Michael, Gabriel. They're more male names. And just interesting because males are not good multitaskers, and angels are not allowed to multitask. Women are the expert at juggling a bunch of things at once. So I'm just off the cuff. It's not a source anywhere, but I'm just thinking that as I speak. But just to bring it home, so Michael and Gabriel and Raphael, I don't know if you're familiar with these names of angels. Each one, their name, let's say Gabriel, comes from the word Gevura, which means strength. That's referring to the side of God to the left that is more disciplined, more justice-based, which we learned about in Tanya. It's more the reverence of God. It's more the respect of God. It's more the left side. The right side, which is Michael, is more the love, the embrace of God, more the generosity. When we give charity, we give it with our right hand because it's more the method of strength with love, overwhelmed with love and kindness. And then you have the middle, which is Raphael, which means healing, and that is compassion. When you have the perfect blend of generosity and justice, of kindness and love with discipline and limits, then you have empathy, compassion, and beauty, harmony. anyway, I'm not going to get too Kabbalistic now, but that's just the general idea. My point that I'm trying to say is each angel or each camp of angels have their distinct and limited way of serving God, which means the angel on the side of love, he serves God with love. He doesn't have the capacity to serve God out of respect, reverence. Whereas the side of the left, which is serving God with respect, fear, trepidation, and reverence, don't have the burning love in their service. Like just in terms of elements, it's referred to, there's the love, there's the service of God out of fire, and the service of God out of water. Water is colder, and fire is warmer. And it says the angels, they extinguish each other with their way of service. One is with fire, one is with water, and each one is almost, God doesn't let them put each other out, but both are distinct services. So just the point that it's trying to say is, since they don't fluctuate, their service remains in one path, either love or respect. I'm sorry, Sherry, yes.
That's okay. What about the fourth one? Isn't it Uriel? There are four.
I don't know, I never heard of him. Is that a
There are
Jewish?
four archangels that I've always heard about.
I always heard of Oreo as
Gabriel, Raphael, Michael, and I think Uriel.
Oh, Uriel. Sorry, I thought you said Oreo. You're right. That's not Oreo for me. It sounds like a cookie, but you're right. Uriel.
That angel has black and white, maybe.
With a creamy center.
You're right. Uriel. Now I got it. I should know that because it's actually my nephew's name is Uriel. So you're right. There's actually many angels. There's like there's myriads. There's like almost an.
But I thought that was the four.
Oh, the four main ones? Maybe. I don't know. I think you're right.
So what was his deal?
I don't know. I don't know much about Uriel. I wish I did. Okay, but thank you for bringing that up, Sherry. That's a very good point. But I think Maddie once asked me to give a class on angels, of what's going on with angels. So it's still in the pipeline. We should definitely give a class on that. Okay. But you got me hungry now for a cookie. Okay, so the point over here is that each one is locked into their method of service. Make sense? Emotions, however, are only fixed when they are not grounded in intellect. And that is why the souls of tzaddikim from the higher intellectual world of Bria are superior. But the world of Bria is illuminated by the blessed infinite one's intellectual powers of Chachma, Bina and Das, the intellectual powers being the source of the emotions, their mother and root. So a mother gives birth. So the wisdom, the intellect, gives birth to the emotions. So tzaddikim don't just worship with the intellect, they worship God with the emotions of love and reverence too. The distinction is that the angels' emotions are instinctual and fixed because they are not the product of the intellectual work, whereas the emotions of tzaddikim are fluid since they are the product of the mind. So just to explain this in short, tzaddikim also serve God with emotions. So we're saying by angels, they serve God with emotions and it's fixed. It doesn't fluctuate. They can't combine emotions, whereas tzaddikim do. Why is it different? They also serve God with emotions. We're explaining because tzaddikim develop their emotions based on the intellect that they have. Based on the meditation that they're thinking, it gives birth, develops the emotion, the feeling. And therefore it could fluctuate based on the intellect that they're having. Whereas the angel, it doesn't fluctuate because the emotion that they have is instinctual, which means it's not developed based on the intellect, and the meditation that they're having is just based on the natural feeling that they have. And therefore it does not fluctuate. And I see from Maddie, Uriel is about truth, guiding us to our truth. Yes, Rabbi, would love a class on angels. So cool. I didn't know that about Uriel. So awesome. Thank you. It's about truth, which is interesting because, so Sherry, so that's answering your question. It's about truth. But in the Kabbalistic sphere, the middle ground, which is harmony, is also the path of truth. It's also known as truth. Like the three main spiritual emotions, which are love, discipline, and compassion are also referred to as the three patriarchs. Abraham served God with love, and therefore he was incredibly generous as a person. He hosted anyone, someone who adhered to his beliefs and someone who totally disproved his beliefs. He served them and supported them nonetheless. That's generosity, outright love. And Yitzchak, Isaac, was the opposite. He served God out of discipline, which means he was more out of reverence of God, and he only gave people what they deserved. Yaakov, Jacob, was the perfect blend of the two, and that's the power of truth, which is harmony also. So interesting that Uriel is harmony. Maddie, do you know where that's from? Is Uriel with feminine? Is this true? I don't know. Yaakov was Tiferes. Exactly. Thank you, Shira. So yeah, okay, cool. Let's continue. But
sorry, Rabbi, I'm having problems with my audio and with my camera today. So yes, it's just from learning that I've done over the years. So I guess it's just like the main archangels that we all connect with. So there, and I guess you can just, there's so many different attributes for each of them, but these are just the ones I know of from working with them.
Thank you.
Rabbi, can I say something?
Sure.
So it's so interesting. I'm reading this week's Torah portion. It's a lot about the laws. And when you read the commentary from our rabbis, it talks about how essential in Jewish law is compassion and showing respect even for the sinner. And so it's melding together love and discipline and coming out with compassion. And when the angels are talked about, they have in this particular parsha, they have a particular mission, which is consistent with what you were talking about. And to address the thing that came up a minute ago about Beinanim, they tell us that we must be patient and work on our soul bit by bit, that it's easier for us to attack, so to speak, to meditate on the more the larger sins and to work on those, and then patiently to work on the more subtle of our sins by meditation. So I think it's interesting to see how this parsha is really coming so much out of what you're teaching us today.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, very nice. And also just to give a plug, Nancy does this beautiful Dvar Torah. It's like really a masterpiece that she puts together with a lot of hard work in writing together thoughts of the weekly Torah portion. And she goes through it. And I think, Nancy, it's almost, if I'm not mistaken, it's exactly a year since you not started writing it, but you started learning the weekly Torah portion. I think it was last Bishalach or Yisro, just around this time that you actually started delving into the text, which is awesome.
I think that's true. I went back, I'm putting it all together, and I think in not Mishpat team, but the next one, it might be the one where I actually started writing my Dvar Torah, but it was around here when I was learning more of the Kabbalistic and the Chabad way of looking at our Torah.
Awesome. So if anyone's not on her mailing list, she puts together a Dvar Torah weekly and she sends it out on Friday. And I print it out and I share it on my Shabbos table on Shabbos, and or you could just read it on your own. It's a great way to keep updated on the weekly Torah portion. All right.
How do you get on her mailing list?
You have to, it's like $1,000 for the first week, and then I'm kidding, Sherry. You just put your email in the note in the comment here, and Nancy will add you in. Or if you want, I could also just email Nancy myself, arthealer at I could email for you if you want. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, here we go. We are in the middle of the text. I shared my screen, I think.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the Tanya now cites proof from the Tikkun Zohar, which is a part of the Zohar, that Bria is a world of the intellect. So now it's getting a, hold on, buckle up, because it's going to get a little Kabbalistic, where he's trying to prove that there's a world of Bria, which is where the angels, where the souls come from, and that is a world of intellect. And as stated in the Tikkun Zohar, the supernal mother has her nest in the three intellectual sephiras of the throne referring to the world of Bria. I'm going to go a little quickly over here. In Ezekiel's vision, cited above, the angels appearing as animals were seen below the likeness of a throne. For here we learn that the world above the angels who inhabit Yetzirah is called the throne. Bria is compared to a throne on which you sit down to indicate that how the spiritual illumination in that world has been downgraded from the highest world of Atzilus above it. I could explain this. It's a little Kabbalistic. I'd rather just go further. And if you have any questions, obviously I could answer. And that's why the intellectual world of Bria is the sole repository of tzaddikim. Basically, it's the base of where the souls come from. Since tzaddikim worship God with a reverence and love that result from cognition and recognition of the blessed one's, of the blessed infinite one's greatness. So just to summarize this point, tzaddikim, which are the righteous ones, the souls, come from the world of Berea, which is the higher world, which is the world of intellect, whereas angels come from the world of Yetzirah, which is the world of emotion. The Tanya now offers a further proof that intellect-based worship is associated with the world of Bria. The proof has three elements. One, as we shall see later on, another term for the world of Bria is the upper garden of Eden. Two, the Zohar states them that in order to enter the upper garden of Eden, a soul must have carried out worship at the level called desire of the heart. And three, above in chapter 17, we learned that the desire of the heart is intellect-based. Okay, so combining these three elements together, we have proof that intellect-based worship, desire of the heart, is connected with the world of Bria, the upper garden of Eden. So to explain just a few things, it's going to be a little Kabbalistic. It's okay if you don't understand all of it, but it's cool to know some of the lingo of Kabbalah. We know that there's the Garden of Eden. In Hebrew, it's called Gan Eden. There's actually an upper Gan Eden and a lower Gan Eden. Well, we know from here, we're going to prove that the upper Gan Eden is in the world of Berea, which is a very spiritual world. What we're going to prove is that that world of Berea, which is where Gan Eden is, that is the world of intellect, which is where the souls come from. So if the souls come from this world of intellect, what it's proving is that the soul-based worship of God is intellectual, that gives birth or develops the emotions, and therefore it fluctuates based on our intellect. Unlike angels that don't come from this world of intellect, they come from the world of emotion, and therefore they serve God with their love or their reverence. And it's not a service that fluctuates. Souls don't fluctuate in, angels don't fluctuate in their service of God. Souls do. We all know that. Why do our service of God fluctuate? Because it's coming from a higher world, the world of intellect, the world of Berea. So what he's going to prove now is, how do we know that the world of Berea is the world of intellect? And he's proving it based on the fact that this world is also known as Garden of Eden, and some other information. So let's base one other thing. It's a beautiful concept. In Hebrew, there's a Kabbalistic. It's actually Aramaic. It's known as Raiva Deliba, the desire of the heart. When you do an act because you have to, you do it. When you do an act because you desire it, it's done in an entirely different way. When I say thank you for dinner to my wife, you can either say it because it's a duty, regardless, or you say it because there's an incredible love. It's not about the dinner she made. It's the connection that you made together. So if it's coming from the desire of the heart, it's done in an entirely different way. The desire of the heart is based not from your heart. It's actually based from your intellect. From there, it births in the heart. It develops into the heart, and that's a deep level of desire. But let's see it inside if it makes sense. So it's a little Kabbalistic. I'll read the words and then we'll come back and try to understand it. And as we mentioned above, chapter 17 and page 203, this love experienced by tzaddikim, when generated by the intellect, is called desire of the heart. In Hebrew, the words are reusa deliba. And from desire of the heart, a garment is formed for the soul, enabling it to inhabit the world of Bria, which, as will be explained later in this chapter, is the upper Garden of Eden, as the Zohar states in its commentary in the Torah portion of Vayakel. However, this association with the world of Bria is not applicable to all the levels of the Tzaddik's soul, but only to its intellectual component. Not the Nefesh or Ruach, but the Neshama exclusively. I'm going to pause here for a moment. Since Bria is a world of intellect, only the part of a Tzaddik's soul which powers its intellectual faculties can ascend there. Okay, so I'm going to take one more moment to explain this. I've explained this before, but I'm not going to take that as granted. I'm going to explain it again. We know there's 5 layers of our heart, of our soul. It's similar to the 5 prayers we say on Yom Kippur, and to the 5 times the Kohen Gadol immersed in the mikvah on Yom Kippur. It starts with the lowest of the 5. I'm going to say them first in Hebrew, and then I'll translate them in English and explain to you what part of the soul it's referring to. We have the level of nefesh. Nefesh literally means a soul. I guess I'm just going to translate it as a soul. You have a level of ruach, which is the spirit. You have a level of neshama, which again is a soul, but it's a deeper level of soul. You know, I'm going to retranslate nefesh over here as energy. Maybe that would fit in better. Energy, spirit, soul. And then higher than that, you have chaya, which is life. And then you have an even higher level than that, which is yechida, which means a place of union or oneness. Oneness is the better translation. Just to explain these how it relates to us. You ever heard of the word mazel tov? I'm sure you have. Mazel is not literally a star, but it's a higher part of your soul that doesn't come into your body. It's almost like when you know, if you ever heard a person say I had an out-of-body experience. It's a part of your soul that sees things and then brings it out to you, like brings you flashes of or you know sometimes you have a memory of something that never actually happened, but you almost say I've been here before. It's a level that has been experienced of your soul on a higher level. That's the level of chaya, which is where your mazel comes from. So when a person says mazel tov, it's meaning the higher level of your soul is on good footing today. You're in sync today with that level. That's a high level of soul called chaya. The lowest of the level is more a biological level, which it says after a person dies, the soul ascends on high, but there's one level of the soul, the biological level of the soul, that actually remains by the grave. And actually, when we go to the grave of our Rebbe, of a tzaddik, we actually describe these words of the Zohar that says that when you visit the grave, the nefesh, which is the lowest biological part, connects to the higher levels and brings them down to visit you. So once again, when the reason why burial, besides for it being the mitzvah of absolute importance, and if you know of any Jew that is considering not being buried, please have a conversation with them just how important it is for the neshama to be buried, or have them speak with me. It's an extremely important part for the soul's continuation and journey. But what happens at burial is the lowest part of the soul remains by the grave. Nefesh, the biological. The higher part is ruach, which that is the emotional part of the soul. And then higher than that is the intellectual part of the soul. The neshama is the intellectual part of the soul. So what I just explained to you is that the soul has an intellectual part, has an emotional part, has a biological part, one above the other. And that's actually why after a person passes, the emotions of that person is very raw, is extreme. Because as long as the person was enclosed in the body, the soul was enclosed in the body, the emotions were limited to the feelings that they could have in their body, to the feelings of their heart. After a person passes, the emotions are extreme. It's the soul emotion feeling absolute feeling of love or absolute feeling of shame or whatever it is that the soul could be going through. And that's why, especially during the week of Shiva, we are extremely careful of how we speak about that person. Because that person's emotions are raw and extreme. now that it left its body. And also the intellect is extreme. So I'm not going through a whole class on the soul, although I hope I'm being somewhat clear. But the point of what I'm trying to bring out of here is that the level of Bria relates to the intellect. It's the world of intellect. And therefore, it directly relates to the intellect part of the soul, which is neshama, the third part of the soul. So I'm just going to read that paragraph again inside, and hopefully it makes sense. Again, the world of Bria, which is where the tzaddikim come from, the souls of tzaddikim, that is the world of intellect, which is higher than the world of the angels, which is the world of emotion. But in that world of intellect, what part of the 5 layers of the soul is mainly expressed is the level of intellect. That's what's being fully channeled in that world of intellect. So the level of intellect of the soul is fully being channeled in the world of intellect of Bria. I just want to read that paragraph again and tell me now if that makes sense. The bottom paragraph where he says like this: however, this association with the world of Bria is not applicable to all the levels of the tzaddik souls, but only to its intellectual component, which is not the 2 lower ones, which was nefesh and ruach, which was the biological and the emotional part of the souls. Rather, it's only connected to the neshama part exclusively, which is the level of intellect. Since Bria is the world of intellect, only the part of the tzaddik's soul which powers its intellectual faculties can ascend there. Because the neshama portion of the soul powers an expanded consciousness of the blessed infinite one. So again, you have the neshama of the soul, the 5 layers, you have the intellect part of the soul. That's what gives us a full consciousness of God. That's how we are able to meditate on godliness. It's based on this level, the 3rd level of the soul called neshama. But the emotional powers in the souls of tzaddikim, which is the ruach, if you've been following, we said that the 2nd level is ruach, of the 2nd layer of our soul is ruach, and that layer of ruach is related to the emotions that the soul has. And so too all the other souls of Israel, which worship God through natural emotions, from a reverence and love, which is naturally dormant within the heart of all Israel, these souls do not ascend there to the intellectual world of Bria. So the world of Bria is exclusively for the level of intellect. So all of the souls of Jews that serve God fully out of emotion, out of our feeling, they don't ascend to the higher world because they're only serving God from a world of feeling. So the layer of intellect that they have is not being expressed in that world of intellect, in the world of Bria. As we conclude this discussion of the unique qualities of the souls of tzaddikim, we cannot help but wonder how the topic is relevant to us, the readers of the Tanya, who in all likelihood will never reach the level of tzaddik. So I think this is a great way to end today's class. However, these are 2 highly relevant lessons each of us can take from this discussion. Number 1, if contemplative work renders tzaddikim superior even to the angels, it must be extremely powerful. So even if I won't reach the level of tzaddik, I should still apply myself to this important type of work. And number 2, even if I fail at contemplative work and I rely on my natural innate love for God, I shouldn't feel that my worship lacks potency. After all, the angels rely on their innate emotions, and their love is certainly not lacking in intensity. And that's from the notes on Tanya, which is from the Rebbe. So just to explain, I just want to make sure, as we have 2 minutes left of the class. So I just want to explain this last piece and then just a general conclusion. This last piece is saying this whole section of this chapter is delivering a theme of the souls of tzaddikim, that they worship God based on their intellect, and it's a much higher level than that of angels. What does that have to do with me and you that are not on this level of a tzaddik, which is what Shira and Maddie were both saying before, that we're on the level of Beinani. So number 1, the Rebbe says that it's important to note that this contemplation that tzaddikim have, it's superior to angels. And therefore, even if I'm not on the level of tzaddik, I have to know that when I serve God based on my meditation, it's also being to a level superior than that of angels. To know that my worship of God is sincere and deeper than that of angels is incredible. So even though on the full level, that's a tzaddik's worship, but to know that even my worship, if it's done with a meditation and kavanah, it's also deep and it's also superior than that of angels. That's extremely powerful. And number two, the second one is actually the flip side of that, to know that I am able to serve God with the emotions, just like that of angels, and that the angel's intensity is on a very high level in a world of Yetzirah, and that me as a Beinoni could also serve God with those emotions and intense love of God, and that's like that of an angel. That's extremely powerful. So number one, to know that in a way, if I serve God with my contemplation, it's superior than that of angels. And number two, that even if I'm serving God with my innate abilities of emotions that I have, to know that that's equal to that of angels, that's awesome. To know that an angel's service of God and my service of God with my emotions is equal, that's awesome. That's amazing. So that's just the ending where the Rebbe wants to say why that relates to me and you, but just the information of the chapter of how that relates to us, and we'll conclude with that, is that we know that the angels are referred to in the prophecies of Ezekiel and throughout the entire text of prophets. They are referred to as animals. In the Hebrew, they're called chayos, and which are wild beasts, and we know them as as the lion of the throne and the eagle of the throne and the ox, the face of the ox on the throne of God. Why are they referred to as animals? Is because they serve God with instinct of their emotions, which is just like what animals feel. So even though they're obviously not animals, they're a lot holier than animals. They're spiritual. They want godliness, but they serve God based on what they are naturally inclined to, and they serve God based on that emotion. Whereas the soul of tzaddikim, they serve God based on their intellect, and that develops a feeling. So they serve God with a feeling too, but the feeling doesn't come from itself, which is what an angel has. The feeling is actually coming from a contemplation, a meditation that they have. So Lynn is asking a great question, and that's from the world of Berea, which is higher than the world of Yetzirah, the world of intellect, higher than the world of emotion. And in that world of intellect, the layer of the soul that is related to intellect is what's coming out there, which is the level of neshama. So that's a lot of information, but I hope you got some of it. And just to take Lynn's question, can you describe contemplative work? So really, it's an awesome question. In Maddie, in chapter 17, when we started understanding the idea of meditation and contemplation, it just gave us the idea that when you serve God with contemplation, it's longer of a process, but it lasts, meaning let me explain this in short. The introduction to Tanya and the index page, the Alter Rebbe himself says there's a short and long way to serve God, and there's a long and a short way. The short, long way is to realize that you have a love for God already in your heart, that God already gave you at birth, and you just have to uncover it. It's like in case of emergency, break the glass and take and pull here, or take the fire extinguisher. It's realizing that you have a love already. So that's a shorter way. But in the long run, it doesn't really get you far. It stops you from right now in the moment, like a Band-Aid, but the longer way is working on our contemplation, developing a meditation for God. It's a longer way, it takes time to develop it, and try to focus for 3 minutes, and it's not easy. But when you do, it'll bring you to a much stronger and deeper level of God. So it's a longer way to get to. Once you're there, it's short. You're in it. So what I already explained to Maddie in the chapter 17 is that the meditations themselves is actually coming in chapters 40 and 41. And throughout those chapters, it actually goes through meditations with us. So it goes over here, it's explaining us the power of the meditation, the importance of the kavanah behind the mitzvah, and the depth of the divine light that we bring, of infinite light that we bring to the world through the mitzvah with kavanah, but it doesn't yet actually go through the work of the contemplation. I guess it's a cliffhanger to get you to stick around to chapters 40 and 41, which is coming up. So, but it's in short, Maddie, sorry, there you are. In short, Lynn, it's working on our contemplation on the greatness of God and how God puts it all aside to want to have a direct and personal relationship with you. When you contemplate on that idea, on that theme, it brings you to a deep level of love. I'm not sure why we are comparing ourselves to angels, since we are two different entities. You're right, but it's just that, just like angels serve God with emotions, most of us also serve God based on a feeling. A tzaddik is serving God based on their intellect, and we have to work on that also. We serve God mainly on our natural love that we have for him. So in that way, we are compared to angels serving of God. Hope we can continue this conversation next week. Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. I could always use the compliments. Did I miss any questions? Is ruach meaning wind? Oh yeah, very good. Ruach means wind or spirit. For the soul too, does it mean the same thing? Yeah, spirit, wind. It's that. Yeah, exactly. So
Breath,
yes. What do you say, Sherry?
breath.
That's actually neshama. It means breath.
Ah,
And neshima is how God breathed into us. That's the higher level of the soul. That's the main level of soul is referred to as neshama. That's usually as we're referred to. Can you please touch on all the Yiddishkeit who could not be buried during the show? What happened to their beautiful souls? So we know that already from the Rebbe that they actually went up directly to the highest level. There's actually a person who came in front of the Rebbe with a tattoo. And we know that a tattoo is a no-no in Judaism. And he asked the Rebbe if he should remove the numbers that he has from the camps. And the Rebbe says, no, that's your ticket to the highest Gan Eden. That's your ticket to the highest level. So that's all I know about it, but yeah. All right. Overtime, I apologize for that. Have a great day, and hope we could see you over this weekend.
have a
Thank you
wonderful
so much, Rabbi.
weekend.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry, what did you say, Cheryl? You,
Have a wonderful weekend.
Sherry.
Yes,
Mazel
mazel
tov
tov.
on Hadassah's bat mitzvah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, hey,
Thank you
this
so
family
much.
coming.
Officiating.
This was an awesome class. This
Yeah.
is wow.
Oh, good. It's still recording, so we got that recording.
Oh.
All right.
Oh,
Bye,
it
everyone.
was
Great day.
wonderful.
Thank
Will
you.
you be officiating, Rabbi?
Yeah, I mean, it's Adina's doing most of the job, actually, so we'll do it together, but it's actually coming from Adina.
Wonderful.
Okay, but you're the
Wonderful.
only male that gets to go?
Actually, my father-in-law will be there as well, and I have a brother that's going to be there. So mainly some family members that are
Okay.
they're going to sneak in. But all right,
Very
everyone,
proudly.
apologies for
See
that.
you.